The solar system is divided into categories of planets. First, we have the luminaries, which are the sun and the moon. Next are the personal planets that make up the individual personality, Mercury, Venus, and Mars. Then come the social planets, Jupiter and Saturn. They represent the individual interacting with society. These 7 planets were in existence when humans created the earliest forms of writing, so there's no record of when they were first noticed. The planets from the Sun to Saturn represented the extent of human life and the human mind, and people didn't need any symbolism beyond that. But here we come to the old saying on which all of astrology is based: as above, so below. There came a point at which human psychology was changing so dramatically that the sky, the mirror of that psychology, also required a change. We needed something for a collective, globalizing modern world, and so came Uranus. Was this planet always out there? Yes, but it wasn't always relevant to us, and so it wasn't in our consciousness. This was the first of the 3 outer planets called the transpersonal planets. Each of these represents one of 3 facets of the transpersonal realm, or the realm of existence beyond the individual's experience. But before I go into this further or explore the meaning of Uranus in the chart, I'll share the story of its discovery. And we can use the word discovery because it was the first planet not able to be seen with the naked eye. It was only found because of the use of modern technology, the new and improving telescope. The year was 1781. In the month of March, the astronomer William Herschel was cataloging stars. There was a star that people had cataloged before, but something unusual occurred this time. Herschel looked at it 2 nights in a row and noticed movement. It wasn't a star at all. It was a brand new planet. Because the discoverer usually names the new item, Herschel named it George after King George III. But that didn't really go anywhere outside of England, and people were calling it Herschel after the discoverer. The first glyph used for Herschel was this. It's still seen once in a while in computerized charts today, but it's awfully esoteric. It's a combination of the Sun and Mars and has a connection with platinum, a newly identified metal at the time. A few years later, the modern glyph came around. It was fashioned by a Frenchman named Lalande, who described it as a globe surmounted by the first letter of Herschel's last name. It was 70 years later, after the death of Herschel, that a new name was chosen by a German astronomer named Bode. He said that if the planet Jupiter was followed by Saturn, Jupiter's father, that theme should continue, and the planet Saturn should also be followed by his father. That's how the new planet was given the name Uranus, god of the heavens. But back to the concept of transpersonal planets. These are the planets in the solar system that belong to everyone, By that, I mean the luminaries and inner planets are very personal. The social planets are opposing energies that need to be integrated into your personal life. But the outer planets are the ones that have a collective expression. As they move around the zodiac, they bring events that shape the attitudes and beliefs of the masses. And here we are discussing the masses of people in Western society because our topic is Western astrology. An important assassination is a collective event, a major terrorist attack, a military victory, even a new type of popular music or a new level of technology are all collective happenings that influence generations. So, does Uranus have a personal expression? Absolutely. And whether we're talking about collective events or the way Uranus operates in your natal chart, this planet has the same personality and the same motive. The list of keywords associated with Uranus are individuation, breaking free, deconditioning, rebellion, revolution, awakening, disruption, and at the core of it all, liberation. All the experiences Uranus brings are intended to liberate you. Liberation often takes disruption. So that's one of the hallmarks of Uranus. This planet is associated with sudden change, and sudden is the operative word. Uranus brings change so quick that there's no time to adapt to it. Uranus operates a lot like an explosion. You can only triage as the pieces fall around you. If you can see the change coming in your life, rest assured a different planet is at the helm. Uranus brings the things that blindside you in order to wake you up. That's how it's earned the name the Awakener. Human beings are easily programmed. We're conditioned from day one with all the ideas and customs around us. In general, we believe what we're told. During our evolution, that trait ensured our survival. The modern Western world, however, is very complex. There are layers of rules and societal structures that have little to do with our physical survival. We can now pay attention to our unique emotional life and the intellect and the psyche and a sense of the soul. The individual has become the most important unit in society, and therefore we feel a complex set of limitations. And Uranus is responsible for breaking free of those limits. Saturn really couldn't have handled this sweep into modern times. He's in charge of preserving antiquity and the establishment. He's known as the keeper of the keys of the gate. Only a new outer planet could deal with what was and what is beyond that gate. Uranus symbolizes the part of the individual mind and the part of society that demands swift change. And it's important to note that when it comes to Uranus, we're not talking about simple freedom. Freedom belongs to Jupiter. The liberation of Uranus is a deeper kind of freedom. It has to do with release from our conditioning, from whatever form of establishment we accept as being true without much investigation. Uranus wants you to live without the chains of family and culture and your own mind that's crushing the authentic self. The job of this planet is to shed light on the limits around you. Uranus was discovered during the age of reason, and as such, it has an extreme intellectual quality. This planet doesn't consider emotion, so Uranus transits can be merciless. If you're halfway liberated, its work isn't done. Of course, here is where you have to consider the natal chart and what the right level of liberation is for the native. You can look at the natal chart as a contract you signed upon your birth, and it will tell you how important personal liberation will end up being to you as you actualize that chart. Also, bear in mind that there are positive and negative expressions of this planet. A dysfunctional sun can easily misuse Uranus. It can cause disruptions for no reason, chaos without a point, without liberation at the end, without growth. In other words, cheap drama and accidents. On the other hand, a functional sun uses Uranus as a groundbreaker. Its liberation is based in ethics and high ideals. Uranus is concerned with the areas where your emotions, mind, and soul are dim and you're not as real as you could be. The house in which Uranus is placed natally is the area where questioning of authority is routine throughout your lifetime and where restlessness and disruption are a constant. Now, there are two things that astrologers take a look at in order to get to know the personality of a new planet when it's discovered. The first thing they notice is what's happening on Earth around the discovery. The second is watching the planet's effect on people and society as it transits the zodiac. So it takes a while to gain understanding of a new planet. When Uranus was discovered, massive changes were going on in the West in the way of revolutions. Political revolutions were happening in the US and France, where established monarchies were being rejected. But the most important revolution was the Industrial Revolution. This was one of the most dramatic things that ever occurred in our history in terms of shaping society and flipping the human experience on its head. The Industrial Revolution meant advances in technology and advances in forms of automation. It took people out of their homes and brought them to cities, creating a cosmopolitan populace. People were awakening to a radically different way of looking at existence. Science replaced superstition as the Enlightenment transformed the conversation in the intellectual centers throughout the West. This was a time of great invention, including the discovery of electricity. Electricity, currents, lightning, they're all associated with this planet. Of course, as with every other factor in the chart, Uranus brings a dark side. After all, it's easy for a revolutionary to go to extremes for an ideal. Revolution can quickly devolve into chaos. Globalization, automation, and invention can all spin out of control and cause human suffering. In the chart, Uranus is always the place where we go to extremes, both intellectually and behaviorally. If you have a dysfunctional sun, Uranus can blow things up without thought of consequences and without a plan to rebuild. On the positive side, Uranus is where we feel the need for reinvention of the self and a deep-seated need for individuality and authenticity. That's the lifetime project of this planet. Uranus makes one pass around the zodiac every 84 years, which means it spends 7 years in a sign. Even though 7 years isn't actually long enough to cover a generation, all of the outers are called generational influences. The issue with the outer planets is that there isn't as much variety in their placements as you find in the inner planets. Hundreds of millions of people will have the same outer planet configurations. Because of this fact, when it comes to an individual chart, the interpretation of the outer planets is done with different priorities. Instead of looking at the planet in the sign, we focus on house placement, angles, and aspects to the personal planets. House position and aspect are actually the only route we have to personalize our experience of the collective outer planets. We haven't gone over aspects yet, so we'll leave them for further down the road. My view at this point is that if we're going to understand the nature of Uranus in the individual birth chart, we'll get a lot more out of looking at house placement rather than sign placement through the zodiac. So Uranus through the houses is next. Thank you for watching Secrets from an Astrologer's Desk, the meaning of Uranus. Next is all the ways you can get in touch for a birth chart reading and full astrological services. And don't forget to like and subscribe.